Welcome to In the News for July 22, 2022. A lot of 20s in there and 22s as well. I am Brett Birdie from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Hey, Brett.
It is good to talk with you again, Jeff. Let's get the quick update out of the way for 15.6 for iPhones and iPads. You mentioned it here. It's not a huge update, but I think we've talked about this quite often, that if it's a point update, especially for iPhones and iPads, I don't really have any hesitation to say, go ahead and get that update. Now, we know that 16 is coming, iOS 16, and yeah, maybe when that hits, you could wait a little bit. We're in the public betas right now, but 15.6 is out, and you had a nice little story here that you linked to in today's post.
Yeah, I mean, only a few things of note here. First of all, I haven't been keeping count, but my brain is just telling me that we've had more little point updates from iOS 15 than any prior one. I haven't done the math to confirm that, but it seems like for months now we've been seeing little bitty updates, and we've thought, okay, well, this will be the last one with iOS 16, and here we go again. But again, I like it because it means that Apple is fixing some bugs and providing some security improvements, and that's why, as you just said, Brett, it's always a good idea to put these on, because you never know what security thing that they found that they're not going to tell the world about yet, but you want to be safe, so that's good. In terms of actual change that you've seen, the only one that I've noticed, and it was a link to in an article that I put it as well, that in the Find My app, we've been talking about AirTags a lot recently. When you look at your AirTags listed before this update, you would actually see a little battery icon that the battery would either look like it was full or 75% full or 50% to give you a rough estimate of how much battery life each AirTag had. That's now gone, with a big exception. The exception being that they won't show it to you normally, but they will show it to you when it gets really low. So on mine now, I just noticed that, in fact, I mentioned last week that of the 4 AirTags I owned, I've now replaced 2 of the batteries. And I just noticed that when I look at it now, my third one in the list, and it's interesting, I bought all these at the same time. The one that I have in my the camera bag for my DSLR camera, it's now really, really low. So I've got like a little red thing that says, really low. So I know that the camera bag one I need to replace, which means that of the 4 that I've purchased, there's only one that hasn't been replaced yet. It's the one on my keys. And at some point soon, I'll get the notice that this one right here has got to be replaced. It's interesting that the one that I carry around with me all the time is the one that the battery is lasting the longest. I have a theory. I have no basis for this at all. My theory is that because this one is close to me most of the time, my keys, and thus it's close to my phone most of the time, it doesn't spend a lot of time connecting itself to other people's iPhones to sort of say, here I am, whereas some of my other devices, that's true. I have no basis for that. I'm just making it up. But it's interesting to me that the one that's with me the most is the one that the battery has lasted the longest. So aside from that one little change, again, you'll still get the notification when it's time to change your AirTag. There really haven't been any obvious changes with this update. So I think it's really just a bug fix and security improvements.
Do you still have an AirTag battery in Milan, Italy? Is that one still?
That one was fixed since I replaced it. We talked about that with the bitterant coating and stuff since I fixed that. So now my luggage once again knows that it is at my house. So, actually, you're right. We didn't talk about that yet. That was a post that I did this week. We talked about it on last week's show. I wanted to show that. My tip in the note.
Yes.
After talking with you about it on the podcast, I'm like, you know what? I should put this on the website so that people can see this. So, and I mean, it's so funny because you look at that picture of the Duracell battery with the kid's picture. We talked about that last week. It's just a funny little picture. But yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Well, I'm glad you posted, because you did use this as your tip, and this wasn't even on my radar at all. But a lot of folks, in fact, you even got a good comment here that somebody found it very helpful. So we'll put that in the show notes. This is the AirTag batteries, and Jeff, you were talking about avoiding the bitterant coatings on some of these CR2032 lithium batteries. But anyway, we'll just leave that. We talked
Scroll
about
down to that comment though, Brett, because the person that wrote the comment in the post suggested that he found that if you use rubbing alcohol to wipe the coating off the battery, then it works. Which on the one hand, maybe I could have saved those batteries that I purchased for a few dollars. On the other hand, for me, the idea of putting alcohol on a battery and then putting it in electronics, I guess that's safe. I don't know. I just bought new batteries.
Interesting. I love it when people read, your readers and our listeners that can come up with their own solutions.
Creative ideas
as well. Something we don't talk about a whole lot, Jeff, is the Apple Arcade service. Now, you and I both talk about Apple One, which I think I ended up subscribing to that for my family, talking to you so much, because it really has been fantastic for Apple Music, for Apple News even. I'm really enjoying the news service. Apple Fitness, which I pretty much use almost every single day now, and several of the other, services, not to mention the fact we get a little bit of iCloud storage. But one of the services that I don't use is Apple Arcade. But you started off the in the news post this week with a story about not what's being added to Apple Arcade, but sometimes Apple is going to take away some of the games that they've added to the Apple Arcade service.
Yeah, and before we get into Apple Arcade, you just mentioned Apple Fitness. I just want our readers to know, Brett, you have no idea what I'm about to say, that you are a fitness stud. Yes. And I say that because you and I, in the fitness app, you can share progress with someone else, so you compete with someone else.
Right.
And so Brett's one of the few people that I share my progress with.
Right.
And I noticed, I think it was last week, Brett, you had a day that you ran 3 miles and then hiked 3 miles. And then you did not just one, but 2 different Apple Fitness 20-minute workouts on the same day. Look at you. You had a bajillion green points that day. So anyway, bravo to you. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm trying.
Back to Apple Arcade. You're trying. You're doing very well. Better than me. Okay, so back to Apple Arcade. Yeah, I agree. I don't play the Apple Arcade games that much, but my kids do. And, because they get it for free as part of Apple One, as you mentioned, it's nice to have.
It's there.
What was interesting about the article this week was that the service is relatively new. It just came out a couple of years ago, right? 2019, I think. And over time, Apple has expanded it a few different times. I mean, at first it was just developers that they reached out to and they had some good deals for. And then afterwards, they found older apps that were beloved in the App Store, but had not been, had been out of print, so to speak. And they paid something to those developers to update them so that they would still work and bring them back. And I thought that was a great way to bring back some old hits like, Cut the Rope and some of the other ones that we used to love years ago. But now for the first time, Apple has taken some of the things that are in Apple, the Apple Arcade, and is saying, we're done with them. I presumably people are not playing them as much. And so this post describes how that works. What it means is when Apple removes the game, then folks that are still playing it have 2 more weeks, and then it completely goes away. And then the developer might decide to take it out of App Arcade and just release it independently on the App Store if they want. So the games that they listed aren't ones that I'm really familiar with. Not that I don't know all the latest and greatest about games, but it's just interesting that whenever, this is interesting for Apple Arcade, but it's sort of interesting in a larger sense because Apple is clearly moving more towards services. And although, for example, on Apple TV Plus, I seriously doubt that there will ever be a day that they'll take one of the shows that they produced out of Apple TV Plus. But then again, they might, because, things that they completely pay for, great. But if there's a show in Apple TV Plus that they have a joint arrangement with, Sony or some other company, it may be that they decide this show is going to no longer be available on Apple TV Plus. And then it'll move on to, who knows, Netflix or Hulu or something else. So it's just interesting.
Well, I will tell you, I have enjoyed having a subscription to Apple Arcade. I don't think I would have done it on its own. Isn't it $5 a month, right? If you just want Apple Arcade. But now that it's bundled into my Apple One subscription, I every once in a while, I will get a notification, hey, Apple has added a new game. In fact, let me see if I can pull this up real quick. They just added recently this game that I've heard about, I haven't played, but Subway Surfers Tag.
Yeah, well, Subway Surfers is a big game. Yeah, and there's all sorts of different versions of it. Yeah.
Right. And so I hadn't played it because I didn't want to buy it separately. And, I think the whole premise is like, hey, you can go and, spray graffiti on train cars. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm not so much into that. But because I heard about it and they added it to Apple Arcade, I don't know, a few weeks ago or so, I tried it. And, the whole premise with Apple Arcade, just quickly, is I see this is not for like the high end, grade A games like that you're going to see playing on Twitch, or somewhere like that, for like Call of Duty or something like that. These are, I think, a lot more of the comfort level, the Angry Birds type, like you can play it for a few minutes when you're standing in line kind of a thing. And so from that aspect, I do like it. I do like having access to some of these games and at least trying it out. But there's a lot of them that I don't care about. I mean, this says play over 200 games here. And just to your point, Jeff, like I don't know a lot of these games and I'm not so interested in, probably about 99% of them, but it is kind of neat that they're available there. And I'm glad that I have it. And I think I just see kind of this evolution, like you've been saying, like we've only had it for a couple of years, but we'll see where Apple is going to continue to take that. And I think they're just trying to get that, find a balance on some of that as well. So
let me push back on something you said just a tiny bit.
Yeah, sure.
Not that you're wrong, but you're just speaking historically. Historically, it has been more casual games. I agree. But right. Knowing Apple, they may well decide, they've got so much money. They may decide that they see some huge game coming in the future that they decide we're going to make this an exclusive for Apple Arcade. So, we may well have a day where some really impressive pushing the hardware to the limit type game is exclusive in Apple Card. Who knows? And anything's possible. So
if they could have got in on the ground floor of Fortnite, I don't think that's going to happen now. But if they
not
had
now,
noticed
probably,
it,
with the
but that's
lawsuit
an
against
excellent
Epic,
point. Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. You're right. If Apple is kind of seeing how many people are playing what kind of games, like they're collecting data on this, right? How many hours people are spending on some type of games versus others, and if they can see something coming down the pike, then they'll be able to grab right onto that. That's good. A kind of a scary story you linked to today, which I found this incredibly interesting, and I think you and I have touched upon this a little bit before. The FBI forced a suspect to unlock Amazon's encrypted app Wicker with their face. So there's several angles to this the story, Jeff, and I thought you did a good job of linking to this. And well, I'll let you decide where you want to start on this.
Let's start with
the legal side, and then there's like the technical side. Yeah, crazy.
Let's start with the elephant in the room. The person that they're dealing with is accused of, having, child abuse materials. Obviously this is not right. No one wants to be thinking about protecting the person with the child abuse sexual material, which is called a CASM. Having said that, it does interact with, how far can the government go and personal liberties and all that sort of stuff. And, traditionally the line that the law has drawn has been that although you have a legal protection against testimonial things. So for example, the government can't force you to say my password is 12345 or whatever. But what they can do is something that doesn't force you to speak. That's just who you are, whether it be a fingerprint or what your face is, or even, blood, taking blood from you, that stuff, or DNA. They can take that stuff because that's not testimonial. So, but as more and more people have private stuff on their phone, this just hits the news more that, we want the government to get the bad guys. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, do you necessarily want the government to be able to look in your phone whenever they want? In some countries you have no choice, but in America and some other countries that are democratic, we like to think we have more freedoms. So my main takeaway from articles like this, which will continue to be in the news over and over again, is keep in mind that, and again, I hope the bad guys aren't listening to me, but all of us that are the good guys, just keep in mind that if you're ever in a situation where you think that somebody, government or otherwise, might try to get into your phone by putting your fingerprint on it or using Face ID or something like that, there's two easy ways to stop that. You can press and hold the side buttons on both sides of your iPhone. So the power button and the volume button, hold them for about 5 seconds. And when you've held them long enough, because it'll have haptic feedback that locks the phone in a way that cannot be unlocked by Touch ID or Face ID. Or another way to do the same thing is on the side of your phone where has the power button, you can just quickly press that button 5 times. And again, you'll know you've done it enough because you'll feel the haptic feedback. And if you look at your phone, you'll actually see the lock screen saying, do you want to, shut down your phone or whatever? You don't have to do anything more. So your phone could be in your pocket. You could just click that button 5 times, and then somebody could not use Face ID. And, I recommend this to attorneys because, just because we may have confidential client documents on it, if you ever found yourself in a situation where you don't want to have to deal with arguing with the customs person and stuff. If you just want to have it into a locked mode, you can do it. Now, of course, there's other implications. Coming into the country through customs, if your phone is locked, they try to seize the phone. It all gets very, very complicated. It does. But just at the very least, you should know those two techniques, because I will admit, there's nothing intuitive about the two techniques I just mentioned. And the only way, and most of us will never use them. So only by hearing about them over and over again, can we remember, oh yeah, that's how you do that. If I ever just wanted, and it doesn't have to be the government. It could be as silly as, you don't want your child to, take your phone and put your finger on it while you're asleep so that they can get approval for whatever, app they want to, in-app purchase they want to do on some game or something, whoever it is you're trying to protect yourself from.
I think my daughter, they were having a laugh, and she'll get my wife's phone. My daughter will get my wife's phone, and she'll look at it and see if she can unlock it with her face because she has similar facial features.
That. I have absolutely heard
to
that,
my wife. And it's worked a few times.
That's
and that scares me a little bit.
Yeah.
So a couple of things I just want to add on this as well. And I've continued to remind people of this because I feel like people think, well, it's Face ID or a passcode. But that is not how iPhones or iPads work. The passcode is always required. You must put a passcode on your devices. And then I think of the Face ID or Touch ID as sort of the overlay on top of that, right? It's like a more convenient way to unlock that. But you can't have Face ID or Touch ID without having a passcode. So to your point, Jeff, what you were talking about, that if you were going to lock it in that way, it just means that you can't use Touch ID or Face ID. You must put in a passcode in order to unlock it. And that's where, sort of these fine lines, like you said, this is certainly not the last story we're going to see about this, but it's just the way the American legal system has what we have landed on is that you don't have a privacy right to like your face or your fingerprint in the same way that you would have a privacy right to protect, the passcode that you've thought up in your mind, something like that. And I can see where that goes. Certainly you and I can kind of see where both sides can argue on that. But, this is a tip I'm always giving out to folks as well. And maybe just because you might feel safer with it for whatever reason. I certainly don't want, someone that is on the bad guy side to be utilizing this to their benefit, because I think that's horrific in what they're trying to protect. But if you have a scenario, whether, you're just a little nervous about having that information that is not protected, then just like you said, anytime when I pull out my phone out of my pocket, I just go click, 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 click. I just keep clicking the side button because I know, I don't even count them. After 4 or 5 clicks, it's just going to continue to lock it. And then when the Face ID will not work on me, and the only way to unlock it is the passcode. And I know that I'm not going to be required to give up that passcode as I would, like somebody could just point the phone at my face or, cut off my finger, I guess, and use my fingerprint along those lines. But it's just such a, I don't know. I don't know if the American legal system needs to catch up and like change the laws on this, Jeff. We know that that's a very slow moving boat on that side. Or, do we just do away with passcode? I don't know. There's not going to be an easy answer to this. And I think Apple, I would think, has been working on this and thinking about this internally for a lot. And we're just going to continue to, I think that's one of the things that they focus on the privacy side so much. But I can see arguments on both sides. And this is just going to be something that's not going to be an easy solution. That's for sure. Interesting stuff. Okay, well, let's go on to a little bit of a happier topic here. Something that I always enjoy hearing you talk about. You had several links this week into some HomeKit or home automation tools. Where would you like to start with this? The first one here on Macworld is what you linked to that I thought was really neat about how to set up a security camera activity zones in Apple's Home app.
Yeah, you can, if you have a security camera that works with HomeKit, typically you'll have 2 choices when you set it up. For example, I own the Eufy ones, EUFY.
Yeah, okay.
And I can use the Eufy software, which has it that instead of monitoring for activity in every single part of the screen, I can say, cut out this square over here or this square over here. Or you can, and I say or because you can use both at the same time, you can have HomeKit also decide not to look at certain parts of the screen. So the article that I linked to by Glenn Fleishman just reminds you how in HomeKit Secure Video, you can say, here's a portion of the screen that I don't care if there's activity there. Because, for example, that part of the camera screen is looking at the street and there's always cars going by. So you wouldn't want every single car going by to trigger something to happen. And so he shows schematics. I actually think that the tools that Apple gives you are even better. And you can see an example on the screen for folks watching the video right now. They give you more sophisticated tools for either including or excluding more parts of the screen. So that's just good to know that you have that. And again, you don't have to, you can either use both, or you can decide I'm only going to use HomeKit or I'm only going to use the one that comes with my camera. And that sort of links to that second article that I linked to, which is from Rachel Cericola at Wirecutter. And I mean, the title says it all. Why we don't trust Apple's HomeKit Secure Video, and you shouldn't either. Now, the title is a little, it's like a big exclamation point. The article itself is not quite, doesn't go quite as far as the title does. But she does raise some good points about I like HomeKit Secure Video, but there's some things that I don't like about it.
Okay.
If you use the built-in software with many cameras, for example, you can get a 4K image, whereas Apple HomeKit Secure Video is limited to 1080p.
Interesting.
And 4K is definitely more precise, and so it's a better image. I mean, the cameras at my house could support. I say 4K, it's 2K actually. The cameras at my house could support 2K, but I just have them in 1080p mode to take advantage of HomeKit. And I would, in a perfect world, I prefer the better quality, but 1080p has been fine. And there's some other things too. She talks about how sometimes HomeKit doesn't detect activity enough, and it makes that made her upset, and I agree with that. I will just say as a counter that sometimes for me, because I've got them both enabled, HomeKit will detect something, but my Eufy will not. Now, it's actually, I will be honest, it's more the alternative. It's HomeKit has less success than the other one, but it's not that either one of them is perfect and one is the not. So anyway, she goes through some other things. So it's an excellent, if you're trying to decide, I want security cameras. First of all, do I even want to get some that work with HomeKit? And then if I do I want to use HomeKit Secure Video exclusively, or do I also want to use that in conjunction with the built-in? I highly recommend this article because it does the best job I've seen of going through all the cons. That she doesn't really discuss the pros, and I've discussed that on my website in the past. So that's all interesting. I'll tell you.
I'm so glad you linked to this. I wasn't even aware of a lot of this stuff. This is a really good article.
Parenthetically, Brett, we had a interesting HomeKit Secure Video issue at my house this week because on Tuesday night, I guess technically it was Wednesday morning, there was like a fire in our neighborhood, and we woke up, we smelled smoke and everything else. And then it turned out that by looking at my videos, I was able to see, when the fire truck showed up and other stuff. So it was really interesting. In fact, at one point, the firemen actually went through the yard of my house, and I could see on the secure video that they had, gone through my backyard to run hoses and stuff like that. So it was interesting. But sometimes it's nice to get, the video of what's going on around your house when you're asleep. So, so anyway, it's interesting to have this
scary
stuff.
Though.
Yeah, it was a little scary. We're all fine. Everything's good.
Okay, good.
But it's nice having. I really like having security videos outside the house, and personally, I encourage having HomeKit on it because the HomeKit compatible ones, because I think it gives you some additional options. And I do think in the future you're going to have even more options because we're moving more towards Matter being the replacement for not only Apple's HomeKit, but also the third-party ones that Amazon and Google and others use as well. And in fact, that's a good transition into this next story that I linked to, which was the Eve Motion. I reviewed the first generation Eve Motion, which is a little box that detects motion. And you can say every time this little box detects motion, I want you to do X, whatever the X wants to be. The one that I have set up in my TV room is if I walk in there, the lights come on. Very simple. So Eve has a new version of it that does everything the old version did. But in addition, it has support for thread. And in addition, it's not just motion detection, it's also light detection. So if it matters to you, like when a light goes on in a closet or in a garage or something like that, I want something to happen, whether it's from a security standpoint of, I want to know when somebody's in my garage, or if it's just from a convenience standpoint that whenever I turn on the light in my garage, this thing will sense it and then it will trigger something else. Maybe it'll turn the backlight on when the front light comes, or however you want to have it set up. So it looks like this new version of Eve Motion is nice. But as I mentioned, it also supports thread, which is good because when you have home devices that support thread, they can act as repeaters. So you may have, you may not, currently you need to have a home base. So you may have a home base in the front of your house. And in the future, when we're in a big thread world, you could have different devices throughout your house that work with thread. And not only can they work with thread and the Matter standard, but they will be able to piggyback and send the signal further back. And so it will allow you to have a better mesh network in your house because you have all these thread compatible devices. So if I was buying anything today for my home, if you have an option to be thread compatible, I would get it, even though you may not take advantage of that for the first 6 months or 12 months. But I do think there'll be a time, a year or two in the future, where you'll be so happy that the thing that you purchased back in 2022 had that forward-looking thread compatibility.
Yeah. That's so great. I feel like I'm so behind on this, but it's good.
But in some ways you're not, Brett, because things are changing so much that
that's true.
This is a good time to start to get into it.
Good. I'm excited, and I know you and I are going to continue to be talking about this. One more happy story before we end, as we are wont to do with some life-saving stories on this. This is another good one I love. It says that Apple Watch saves. She's from northern Maine, I think, which is really fantastic on this. That she was utilizing the Apple Watch, and it kept telling her that, well, why don't you tell the story on this? I thought this was really fantastic.
Yeah, it's funny that she felt like she was in perfect health, and her Apple Watch tells her one night, you might be in AFib. You may be having atrial fibrillation. And she's like, that's ridiculous.
No, I'm not.
And then the second night in a row, it tells her again. And she's like, well, that's just silly. What is that about? But then when it happens the third night in a row, she says, okay, maybe it's not just a false positive. Maybe something's going on here.
Maybe I should get it checked out.
Which is smart for any of us to do. And so she goes in, she gets it checked out. And sure enough, the doctors say, yeah, there is this fast growing tumor that's squeezing pressure on your heart. And that's why you're getting these things. And it was the sort of thing that, like, if you had not come in so that we could remove the tumor, which was, of course, a big surgery, but it was successful, you would have been a gone pecan. So she is just, beyond herself thankful. And again, it's always, Apple doesn't, they have, because of FDA limitations, there's so much that they can say about these being health devices. But the reality is it provides you with data, and you can do what you want with that data. And sometimes that data can be truly, life-saving. Sometimes it's not, it could be false positives. You never know. But, I think it's great for all of us to be able to get some early warning signs, and Apple Watch and similar devices that attach to your body give you that capability, which is great.
I like how she was so happy with it. She has the Minnie Mouse watch face on the watch, and so she was talking about how Minnie Mouse was helping to tell her that there might be something up. And the other thing I love for this little video is that she goes into the hospital because she had to have like emergency surgery, right? I think it was like a 5-hour. There she's holding her Minnie Mouse watch, but she had to have this emergency surgery. So she was talking about during the prep, they were prepping her for surgery, and they were like, well, you have to take off your jewelry and your watch, and she's like, I'm not taking off my Apple Watch.
Minnie Mouse is
like
protecting
it got me. Yeah, Minnie Mouse is going to stay with me the whole time, and I just thought that was great. And then one other kind of a similar story. I love this. You linked to that it's not really funny, but wow. I mean, come on. I think I've heard about this one or two other times. This is a Ukrainian soldier. Apparently had an iPhone in a pocket in like his breastplate or something. I'm not even sure exactly where it was located, and he was saved from a bullet because the iPhone stopped it. The iPhone didn't survive, but he did. And I think that's more important.
And you're right, Brett. Apple does not advertise the iPhone as being bulletproof. But this is like the third or fourth story I've seen in the last couple of years where, I mean, of course, how horrible to be in a situation where a bullet comes towards you, whether you are Ukrainian soldier in war or just somebody on the street. The last one I remember sawing, someone was just walking down the street at night and it was a stray bullet. And I mean, of all the places on their body where the bullet could have hit, it just happened to hit the iPhone in his pocket and of course destroyed the iPhone, but it protected him from the bullet. So so I guess what we need to do is just get like hundreds of iPhones and cover ourselves.
Who needs Kevlar when you've got iPhones?
Exactly.
All right, in the know, I am getting ready to go on a vacation, and we are actually going to Maine. I think we did this even last year, so we'll see how much we can do some broadcasting from the great state of Maine. But I've also just kind of getting started to do a little more hiking. I guess this is part of my fitness nerdiness going on here. But I found an app called AllTrails several years ago, and I got it for free, and it's available for free. I never upgraded to the pro version. And in fact, I still say for most people, if you're not really gung-ho into the hiking aspect, then AllTrails, the free version, is perfectly fine for you. What this does is I'm always looking for like, where's a good place to just take a walk, right? Or AllTrails will also tell you if you want to go running, if you want to go really good hiking, if you just want to go for a leisurely walk, if you want to take your dog with you or not, what trails allow you to bring your dog or other pets if you have some. And then also for like biking, this is just a fantastic community that has built up around this this app. And again, the free app may be perfectly fine. And in fact, I recommend that you can go and try AllTrails. I continue to find trails even close to me, around 10 or 20 miles around me, that I didn't even know about, and I thought that I knew most of them. But what this will do is it'll help you, show you, here are some trails. And the other thing that I really like about it, not only can I filter out, like, I want a trail that's easy or moderate or hard, right? You can filter that out. I want a trail that's only for, a leisurely walk that allows me to bring my dog. And I can go in, and there's all kinds of people that have posted reviews of whatever the trail is. So they'll tell you, oh, by the way, you need to park over on this side, right? Because the trailhead, the beginning of it is over here, and, make sure you bring your own bag for your dog, because there's nothing available there. Like, everybody is just so good about explaining what you need to do. Well, because I'm getting ready to go to Maine in a few weeks for vacation, I want to do some trail hiking up there. In fact, that's what I've got for my background. This is Mount Katahdin up in Maine. And the great thing is, it usually is $30 a year for the pro version. And this just gives you a couple of other things that you can download maps. So if you're going to be in a place where you don't have access, to the internet, you can download the map, for example. And it also gives you a couple of additional functions for filtering out different apps. You can say, I want to only see apps within 15 miles of where I am, that kind of a thing. And then also just some additional map details. So again, you don't need to get the pro version, but I highly recommend go and download the AllTrails free version. And then you can also connect with other people, friends, if you want to meet up for a trail, that kind of a thing. Just a really nice little app that, some of these I find, some of these apps I find are just good, for the basic knowledge, but other apps really start to blow up and really are much more fun because of the community built around it. For example, Spotify, I like Spotify and Apple Music too, but with Spotify, they just do a really good job of sharing songs with each other, and getting in groups and creating playlists, that kind of a thing. And that's fun. And I look at the AllTrails app in a similar way as well. So this is alltrails.com. You can download the free app for iPhone or for Android. And then if you want to, I found a deal. They gave me a half price for a year, for $15 for a year. So that's what I signed up. I don't know if that deal is still going on or not, but it's usually $30 a year for the pro version of that. That is my tip for the day, Mr. Jeff.
Good tip. Good tip. So my tip is talking about an Apple product in a non-Apple scenario, which is this. I love my AirPods Pro. I use them all the time.
Okay.
I usually don't use them when I podcast with you because I use my fancy mic here and stuff like that. But
right.
Otherwise, I'm always using my AirPods, but I don't just use them with my Apple devices like my iPhone and my iPad and even my Apple TV. I work in an office environment that has a Windows computer,
right.
And I don't listen to a lot of sound on my Windows computer. And when I do, it's just using the internal speakers, which sound,
right.
really, crappy. But the one thing, the audiovisual thing I do a ton with my computer, especially since COVID, is video conferences. I'm often on a Zoom conference or a Windows Teams conference. And of all the solutions that I have tried, I actually find that Apple's AirPods, especially the AirPod Pro that I have, are really perfect for that.
Really?
My
yes,
Windows
I
computer.
agree.
Well, the AirPods Pro operate as a Bluetooth AirPods, and there you go. And they work great with my Windows computer. But here's a couple tips that if you use them with Windows, because let's be honest, AirPods are going to work better with Apple products
with an iPhone or an iPad
with non-Apple
yes.
products.
Yes.
But here's a couple tips of what I do. First of all, in my toolbar at the bottom of my Windows PC, I have put like a little shortcut so that it's on my toolbar to the settings app. And the reason I do that is, unlike Apple devices where the AirPods can be smart enough to automatically swich devices depending upon what you're using, with Windows, you're going to have to do that manually. So by having that little shortcut on my toolbar, I can always click on that. And then once I've paired it the first time, I'll see my AirPods show up there, and I can just click on the button on my computer that says connect. And now I'm connected with my AirPods to my Windows computer. Here's the second thing I'll tell you is, even though the AirPods are connected to a Windows computer, your Apple devices still know about them. So for example, if I'm on a conference call that goes a long time and I'm wondering, I wonder how much battery life I have in these AirPods. Are they going to die in the middle of this long conference or this long deposition or whatever I'm doing? You can still use your iPhone and just, swipe from to the right to see that screen that's got like a little
the battery.
Exactly.
indicators.
And you can look at the battery indicator and it knows your AirPods. It will, it'll give you that little
Oh.
graphical indication. So you can see, oh, I'm only halfway down, or I'm 3/4, or I have a quarter left. So you can sort of use your iPhone to monitor the battery life, even though your AirPods are connected to your Windows computer. And then the next thing I'll tell you, and this is the sort of scary thing. Sometimes if you have a very, very long conference, or maybe your just AirPods weren't charged enough to begin with, you can get to the point where they're running pretty low. And so what can you do? So you can always take an AirPod out of your ear and put it in the case, and you can still continue to use the other one. So you're charging one while you're using the other to listen. And here's the danger is that, I mentioned before that Apple devices are smart enough to connect to AirPods, automatically as you go from device to device. Sometimes they can be a little aggressive. And so sometimes
this is true
in the process of you taking one out to charge it and putting back in, your Apple devices might seize control of the AirPods. And then suddenly you can't hear what's going on in the conference, or people can't hear you if you're speaking. So, that's, if that's going to happen, one thing that you can do before you take things out of your ears is go to your iPhone and your iPad, assuming those are the Apple devices you have close by, and just put them in airplane mode or turn off Bluetooth. Turn off Bluetooth. Actually, that's the way to do it, because airplane mode wouldn't turn off Bluetooth. So if you turn off Bluetooth in those devices, they won't be able to grab them, and that's a quick solution. So it's you have some hoops you need to go through when you're using AirPods with Windows. But I'll tell you, they're great because, much like you're showing right now on the screen, they're very unobtrusive in your ear. So when you're talking to clients, or for me as a lawyer, talking to courts, judges, and stuff like that, you barely even notice them. They're not like these big honking things over your head that like Princess Leia buns. And they look pretty good, and they sound really good. If you've got the AirPods Pro, you can turn on noise cancellation. And so not that it's very noisy in my office here, but just the simple sound of air conditioning and stuff, it can remove that noise, which makes it easier for me to hear the other person speaking. So it's a big win for me. Just those are a couple of tips for using it with Windows. But otherwise, I highly recommend it.
And they work. I use my AirPods all the time, but I'm doing it with the iPhone and the iPad and the Mac, and I just never connect it with my Windows computer. But I'm so glad you shared that tip, because it is possible, and it is not so much of an egregious kind of a look to it, and it's similar. And the microphone is very good. I use mine for Zoom calls all the time. Now, of course, I'm on a Mac, but I just had never thought of it on a Windows. That's an excellent tip. And by the way, we'll link to an article here. You do have to pair your AirPods with your Windows. Yeah, the very first time, exactly. And it's very simple to do with the AirPods. You can just hold that button down, with the Windows computer. But once it's paired, then like you said, Jeff, you can just go into the Bluetooth settings in Windows and say connect to this right on there. Exactly. Okay, that's great. That's great. Good tips. Loving that all around. All right, my friend, another week. Thank you for your post as always, and we'll talk to you next week.
Good talking to you, Brett. Bye-bye, everybody.